Welcome to the Gateway House podcast. We're at T20 Mumbai. Today we have Major General John Hartley, CEO of Future Directions International. First of all, what do you think the importance of the T20 is to the G20?
I think it provides an element of identifying what are going to be the critical questions, the critical issues that the G20 needs to start focusing on. And in fact, what attracted me to come here was the fact that I believe we've got some very significant issues starting to appear. Some of them are with us today, but if we don't start to consider these issues sooner than later, they're going to provide immense challenges in the future. So I'm hoping that the G20 will probably take an increasingly longer term outlook than it may have done in the past. So that's why I actually spoke at this particular session.
So you mentioned the G20 keeping in mind the long game of things. What role do you see the G20 playing in tackling some of the future challenges that you said are coming up and will come up in the future?
I think in the first instance it's probably making the G20 aware that these issues are going to be things that they need to consider. So identifying the issues themselves is the first part of the challenge. The second part of the challenge is to try to determine how these issues are going to evolve, how they're going to impact upon global issues, who's going to be affected by them, and to start to consider developing policies which ultimately will bring about activity which will attempt to, if you like, resolve these issues.
So what are the future issues that you foresee?
Yeah, I think that there are at least 5, and there are probably more. And all of them have been considered in some form or another over time. But I think that these issues have the possibility of becoming major challenges in the future. It may not be for some time, but if we don't start to consider these issues now, we're going to be even more hard-pressed in the future to deal with them. And it may not be the people who are at the conference, it may be their children and their children's children. I think the 5 issues, and mentioning them very briefly, are first of all the fact that we have a significant population growth, the demographic factor. We've got a population now which has reached over 7 billion, and it will go to something between 9 and 10 billion by 2050. How do we keep up with that many additional people in the world today, recognizing that most of those people are going to appear in areas that are already struggling to deal with their populations? The second issue is the question about global food and water security. There is no doubt that we're going to be hard-pressed to feed the populations of the future, and our access to fresh water in particular is becoming an extremely difficult issue. We have far less water to access now than we had in the past. I'd also mention the impact of climate change, which is a highly contentious issue, but which could have a major impact upon the whole global economy, the whole global population, particularly if the current rate of global warming continues. We need to do something about that. And of course, a lot of people still don't believe that is to be the case. The fourth issue, very quickly, is that we do have a rising sense of global inequality. And I think there are 2 factors that make inequality different today from what it has been in the past. Firstly, the large number of people that we have on Earth, and secondly, the fact that social media, I think the information age has made information much more readily available to many more people who are starting to respond because they can see that information. And the last issue is we're probably going to have a rise in technology. We will have robotics replacing large numbers of semi-skilled and unskilled workers. And what are the impact of having this sort of outcome when those workers require to work in the jobs they have right now to provide the income they need to look after their families? It's an issue that we need to consider. So those are the issues that I would like to raise and have considered.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sitting with us and sharing your views on this subject. You've been listening to the Gateway House podcast. Stay tuned for more.